The next thing we're going to talk about is Smith & Wesson's 44 Magnum lever gun. We're going to go into a little bit of history with the company and try to figure out exactly how did they go from revolvers, M&Ps that we're pretty familiar with, the AR side of the house, into lever guns. The old Billy Baroo. Billy. What's interesting is how old Smith & Wesson is. Smith & Wesson is almost a 175-year-old company. I'm 50. I remember growing up, my mom had a Model 19 4-inch, beautiful gun. We had, Smith & Wesson back in the day, floated around in the house. It was very common. So it's hard to think about 175 years that they've been doing business. One of the interesting things when I started talking to the marketing and the staff after they sent me this gun to test, to shoot, to give feedback on, was like what drove it into that side of the house to where a company that's been extremely reputable in regards to their revolvers. We saw them really take Glock on pretty hardcore back in the day with the M&P. And then of course you've got various breakoffs of that. They got into the AR game, which made sense, a lot of companies did. But to jump into lever guns, at first I was just like, what takes a company like this and drives them into the lever gun side of the house? One of the first things I chatted about was, the direction with the CEO. Mark Smith is the current CEO. Basically 2 years ago, he was like, this is what I want. I want a lever gun. The first thing that I think they did an outstanding job with was, since they're only coming out with one right now, what caliber would you want to pick? And I think they were really smart in regards to 44. I think 44 is a great baseline across the board because you got 44 Magnum, so 240 grain generally is what you're pushing at about 1400 feet per second. And then if you run 44 Special, you're usually looking at about 900 to 1,000 feet per second, which is great for the subsonic side of the house. I am pretty sure that they're going to come out with other calibers, but I think it was smart that they came out with this caliber first. It's a great one size fits all. Now, I'm a big fan of 45-70 and I'm a big fan of 357 because the two of those kind of fill and complete the gamut. But if I could only own one, then the 44 would be the way to go. So 2 years goes by, and at this SHOT Show 2024, Smith & Wesson unveils the fact that they've got a 44 Magnum lever gun, and they're jumping into that arena. What's fascinating to me, and I did not know this, so I'm going to assume not a lot of people knew it, unless you were a good connoisseur of history, and that is in 1852, Smith & Wesson developed a gun. It was a repeating lever action pistols. And if all goes well, I'll have some photos attached to this so you can actually see it. It was also basically caseless ammo. They called it rocket ball ammo. I believe the gun was called the Volcanic, and this is 1852, say to design this gun. Then some of the engineers that helped design it left for Winchester and Henry. I think what fascinates me most, especially after looking at the photos, there's only a couple guns out on the market that I'm aware of that attempted the caseless ammo side of the house. One was, everybody's pretty familiar with the HK-G11. That fired caseless ammo, had its problems, and I was really shocked that we never tried to develop that any further than what it was. Meaning in the development of arms, yeah, we've switched to this caliber, increased bullet speed here, but the guns are pretty much the same. I mean, like, I don't know if we're going to just take a jump from standard style ammunition right into, lightsabers and laser pistols. But to think that it didn't just start with the HKG-11, that it started back in 1852. And that, I think, is a pretty cool backstory in regards to a company who decided to get into the lever gun business. Shit, you were already into business in 1852. Why'd you give it up? Probably should have stuck with it. I mean, even if you didn't turn it into something caseless, you could have just ran more modern style ammo, and that would have been cool too. So it's going to be interesting to see the direction in which Smith & Wesson goes here in the future. And I think, knowing their reputation, I think it's going to be pretty cool. So we'll cover the features on this gun right out of the box. What are you going to get? Can you suppress it? All those things that most of us want to know, because I want to buy a gun and I would love to avoid sending it to a gunsmith. No offense, there's great gunsmiths out there that have wrenched on my guns, but anytime I can just get a gun from the factory and not have to worry about it, even better. Starting at the muzzle end, the barrel does come threaded. This just happens to be a JK Armament can. Now, one thing that I was a little shocked about, because I have Marlins, and I have not current Marlins, but older style Marlins, and Henrys, along with Rossi's, they run a different thread pitch. Smith & Wesson runs a thread pitch that's 11/16 by 24. So you can see how big that is, especially when we start to look at it from this perspective right here. It's not a common thread pitch. Now, I guess Sammy switched out and put in a new spec, and this is what a lot of the companies are running. Whether they need to or not, man, I'm not really sure. I've never had an issue with any of my other guns, and I shoot them a lot. And some of the loads that come out of some of those guns are running pretty fast and pretty hot, and I've never once had any type of issues whatsoever. One thing that I do like, that I like to see about a lot of the newer manufacturers that are starting to bring these guns out now, is making it to the point to where I don't have to send it to a gunsmith. I have a lot of older style guns that have to go and get wrenched on by a gunsmith. Hell, just the action alone to make it smooth, which is crazy, because we're buying a firearm and we're assuming that it's going to function and work. And sometimes we get in here on some of these receivers and stuff, we start looking at the parts, they still got burrs on them. And of course, the rounds are feeding from the tube, moving off a loading device, so to speak, and that portion in there needs to be smoothed out. So the first thing that I definitely like is the fact that I don't need to send this thing to a gunsmith, because the action on the gun is great. So far, the reliability has been really good. I'm just running factory ammo, both 44 mag and 44 special. One of the other things that you'll notice, they pretty much do this version in all polymer. Now, they do one in wood as well, and the gun's more of a, let's call it more of a blued or like a DLC look. They got a different name for it, but it's very close to what we're talking about. They do another high-end one that is limited to 1,000. The thing's gorgeous. It's got like this melanite look to it, and the wood on it is obviously very exotic and very expensive. So a little bit different style of gun, but they're going for that more nostalgic look. It comes with a rail system on top on the receiver. You can see that rear sight right there. It's a little tough to adjust these style of rear sights, but if you take your time, they can be dialed in really well. Brass bead front sight. What's interesting about this is that the mag tube right here comes completely out. Now, this is a lot different than, say, a Henry, where the Henry has a outer tube and then this becomes the inner tube. This makes it really easy for you to change parts on this, i.e. Throw on another company's rail. Obviously, you guys know that we developed a rail with Ranger Point Precision, so I fancy that rail, but there's a lot of different rails that are out on the market that some of you guys may like that will interface well with this particular gun. I noticed that this gun, and as I've talked to them, is a very good blend between both a Marlin and a Henry. And I think they did really well on that. One of the things they definitely talk about is they didn't want things to be proprietary. And I think that's a really big deal, because a lot of companies, you know, they want all that cheddar. And those that kind of go for that all or nothing generally don't do well. So I think building it in this manner where other parts fit on this gun, I think is a big deal. And I think the quality is a big deal as well. Overall, this 1854 44 Magnum by Smith & Wesson, I think they did a great job and hit a home run right out of the box. I wish you guys could see inside the receiver a little bit better, how smooth it is in there. The camera really doesn't do it justice, but shooting it, you can definitely tell. You'll notice that they run a flat trigger. They run a little bit bigger loop. I'm actually going down in loop size because I can run the gun faster, because my hand doesn't have as much movement inside that. So you'll see that this is great for a lot of us that you know, we shoot the gun, we want to enjoy it, we want to be able to run it quickly, but if you really truly want to run it a little bit faster, you're going to have to do what the cowboy action shooters are doing, and that is change out this loop system on here, go back to a small one so there's not a lot of play. There's usually just enough room for a couple fingers to get in there, and then you're just banging them out. So in all, kind of surmising this 1854 Smith & Wesson, I am eager to see other calibers, and I'm eager to see what they do next in promoting this community. I think they've already done an amazing job with this gun. It's accurate, it's reliable, which is most important, and generally, unless you're going to chop this barrel and make it smaller, there's nothing you need to do in regards to sending this to a gunsmith, and I think that's a huge win. And that's not anything against gunsmiths that are out there. I got plenty of guns sitting with gunsmiths right now. It's just nice for a consumer to buy the gun, put different parts on it, and be done, not having to sit there and wait, you know, 6-8 months for a gun to be built for them when it comes right out of the box ready to go. So accessories on this gun: JK Armament suppressor. We have a Ranger Point precision rail system here, along with their side quiver, and then of course their stock system. A lot of guys ask me about collapsible stocks on these guns. It's one screw right here. Pop that out and the whole stock comes off. To get a flange here to start side folding, I believe the amount of material that you would need would start extending out the length of pull, and you really wouldn't want that. But if you do get to collapse this thing down, pull this damn screw out, pull the stock off, and she'll collapse pretty small for you. On here is also an anvil mount. It has a backup iron sight system. They're not national match, so don't think you're going to be getting extreme accuracy out of this. It's just there to get the job done for anything, primarily what I believe is up close and personal. Then I'm running a 509 closed emitter Holosun on this as well. I had realized that when I was talking earlier in the video, the Volcanic that we talked about, caseless gun by Smith in 1852, the HKG-11 we talked about being another caseless gun. The one that I forgot was the Benelli Armis. It's a M2 submachine gun, and it was running a 9mm Fiocchi rocket round. It was basically their version of a rocket round submachine gun. So I'm excited to see what Smith starts doing as they are maneuvering a little bit outside the traditional box. I'm sure their board members, and I'm sure the people that you know, sponsor and work with Smith and fund it will appreciate hitting a market that they once owned. Smith & Wesson fans, and then of course people that are more traditionalists in the lever gun community, now you have another option, which I think is awesome. That's what this community is all about. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.